Okay, good morning. Let us begin by acknowledging that we are gathered today in Mi'kmaq, the ancestral, present, and future territory of the Mi'kmaq people. Today, we gather with the intent followed by the Living Peace and Friendship Treaties with respect, cooperation, and coexistence. We are all treaty people. Welcome on this snowy, wet, icy morning. We're starting on time, even in a storm. So thank you all for coming out and driving safely to get here, and welcome those of you joining us online. We have one member in the gallery who I don't know walked or drove, but anyway, welcome. And I will call this meeting of the April 8th, 2025 council meeting to order. I will take an approval of the agenda or additions to the agenda. Councillor Carver.
Mayor, I have two items to add to the agenda. One is the strategic plan. And that would go under staff reports? I'm not quite sure for council items.
Well, what we had, I guess originally thought is that there was correspondence that would be coming in, but I think at this stage, it probably makes more sense to add it as a council item.
Council item, so
Okay.
8.3 is the strat plan.
And the other item would be to add a report from the audit committee, audit and finance committee.
And that will be item 9.5. Okay, are there any other additions to the agenda? If not, I'll take a motion to accept the agenda as amended.
It's 9.7, actually, I believe.
Yeah, there's a mistake in the number.
Oh.
Okay, that's my fault. I totally was.
Oh, I'm sorry.
I just looked at
Oh, the
one above
numbers
it.
are, okay,
Yeah.
9.7, so,
Teamwork.
okay, 9.7. Thank you. So can I have a motion to accept? Councillor Tuano
I'll second that.
and second by the deputy mayor. Thank you. Ready for the question? All those in favor signify with aye. Opposed, nay. The motion is carried. Thank you. We will move on to the acceptance of the minutes. We have the special council meeting of March 21st, 2025. Would someone like, are there any errors or omissions?
I'll move that the minutes be circulated of March 21st, 2025.
Councillor Carver moved
I'll
the,
second that.
and second by deputy mayor. Any discussion? All those in favor signify with aye. Opposed, nay. The motion is carried. Thank you. The regular council meeting of March 27th, 2025. Are there any errors or omissions? Would someone like to make a motion? Councillor Carver, thank you.
Not to be repetitive, but I'll second that.
And second by the deputy mayor. Thank you very much.
Can we do a move? Be the motion, a vote?
We
We had a motion in a second, or did we vote?
I thought we voted. Okay. All those in favor signify aye. Opposed, nay. The motion is carried. Thank you. Announcements by council members. Anybody have any news from the community that they wish to share? Celebrations, something you did unique this week? I'd just like to say that tomorrow is Vimy Ridge Day, and to remember that Canada was recognized as a great nation on April 9th.
And we still are.
And besides being the best little town in Nova Scotia, so
Day is it?
Vimy Ridge Day,
Oh, Vimy Ridge Day.
Yeah.
Thank you.
World War I. And if any of you ever get the opportunity to visit the monument in France, it is amazing. It is amazing. I've had that experience, and it's very, very emotional, and I wish every Canadian could get there. Anyway, moving along, do we have any public input? Okay, sure.
Real quick, so.
Sure, Nick.
Hello and good morning, everyone. Nick Kapanek, 126 Hawthorne Road. I'm just here today. I'm happy to answer any questions if they come up as appropriate to our rezoning application. And I just wanted to take a moment to recognize and thank Garth, Emily, Dylan, and other town staff and the PAC committee for their partnership and collaboration to find a mutually positive solution related to the request, and hope in turn council considers it for approval today. Thanks.
Thank you, Nick.
Thanks, Nick.
And thank you, I think your Citizens Association should celebrate you well for all the work you've put into this. Lot of research and time has definitely, and a very well-written report.
Thanks.
Okay, moving on, we have correspondence, 6.1. From Karen Pinson, Mahone Bay Signature Festivals, BIC and public washroom operating dates. Any discussion on that? Oh, Councilor Feeney.
Mayor, I thought it was a pretty reasonable request that we have historically attempted to try to meet. I was just curious if the CAO, if historically we also opened the facility by the government wharf to the December 7th date, or if we had kind of focused the extended season around the Edgewater facility. I just wanted to know if you can recall if we ever opened up the government comfort station that late.
Yeah, I don't think that we have. I think that initially, like, the thought was that we might do both, but we've kind of done different trials in different years. And I don't think we've kept it later than mid-October.
For the government wharf facility, right? So that was sort of my recollection as well, and it wasn't crystal clear, given our deferral of the upgrade of that facility, whether that was even a possibility to extend the government wharf. So, like, my sense of things is we should focus on the comfort station at Edgewater and keeping that open until the 7th of December. But as it relates to the other washroom, unless there's an increased budget appropriation, I think that would be more challenging for us to grant that request.
And I mean, for 2025 specifically, it's actually a moot point, because as soon as the marina closes down, we're intending to schedule the renovation of the marina washroom. Now that that has been approved, right? So we'll be, we won't have it available to us.
When does the construction start on the Edgewater washroom?
We're just working it out, but probably within a week or two.
Oh, so it will be done then by December?
The Edgewater one is still gonna open in the summer. We're just not quite
Oh, in the
sure when
summer.
it will get open. Like, hopefully it'll be open.
Oh, really?
Like, that's the thought. We're gonna get going as quick as possible with it. And then, during that time, we'll do the contract. For the other ones, we can't actually confirm when it will happen, but we thought if it starts when the marina closes, then that would probably make the most sense.
Mayor, I guess the final question is the budget presentation going to include the assumption that the comfort station and its underlying operating costs is going to be in place until the 7th of December versus the October?
Yeah, well, so for this year, we're gonna only have Edgewater from when it is finished being renovated, probably the beginning of July, through till that one, December.
Okay, so
And then
we
the
can say
Main
yes.
Street one, it'll actually be closed by the end of the marina season. So the budgets will reflect that. Yeah. And then for next year, I guess we can have some discussion earlier, maybe with the chamber around, would it be advantageous to have them both open later? But this year, it's not an option anyway, so.
Just,
Oh, yes, Councilor Paul Freeman.
just a question, when they're closed, are they decommissioned, so to speak, and water taken out and all that kind of stuff, so it's difficult to get it going?
Yeah,
Start it up
that's,
again?
that's usually what, like, by that time, by December, that needs to happen.
Because about the only thing that happens at the marina is the reindeer run, which is a huge crowd of people.
Yes,
But opening it for one day does seem practical.
no, not for that amount of year.
bring portable. Okay, thank you for that.
Okay, thank you.
With that, Mayor, I'd move that we receive item 6.1. I'm assuming staff's gonna
Okay,
correspond with
okay.
Karen.
Item 6.2, is from the Honorable Kim Maslin.
We need a
Oh,
second.
I'll second,
sorry,
I'll-
seconder.
I'll second.
Sorry, Councillor Kingsmill seconds. Are we ready for the question? All those in favor signify aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. The motion is carried. Thank you. Moving on to 6.2, the Honorable Kim Maslin, Department of Emergency Management, 911 Cost Recovery Fund. I received a letter from the minister and check for $1,000. Have we received that $1,000 yet, or?
I think it just comes in by automatic.
Okay,
Deposit.
automatically. For 911 cost recovery, I understand it has to do with the blue numbers. That,
Yeah, it's, I mean,
Yes.
just generally
Okay.
the promotion of the 911 civic addressing program, so getting people to put up the blue numbers, and actually this counts. If you're watching and you don't have one, I guess check our website for details how you could get one. I'm looking at Kelly, because she puts the notice in the newsletter every month.
yes, and there are homes without
Better
a
get it.
blue number. And I can tell you in an emergency, when EHS and a lot of communities have the same name streets, it is very confusing. We don't have paramedics that live in Mahone Bay. They come from all over Nova Scotia to fill in. And a lot of them are not familiar with our communities, not like the days when you could say, oh, so-and-so's grandmother's house. Those days are gone. So please, if you do not have a blue number and a visible blue number, sometimes people put it, but really you should have the sign out in front where it can be seen easily.
Perpendicular,
Yes. Thank you.
Ryan.
And thank you to the minister. Moving on to item 7, staff reports. Is there anything people wish, I think there's some business in 7.1, is it?
Well, I just, always happy to speak questions on 7.1. It's just a summary of tasks assigned and completed. Anyone has any questions? It's much shorter these days.
Yes. Okay, 7.2, NJSB memo, funding decision, March 27th.
Do we need to provide a letter of support? Is that what we're trying to get out of 7.2?
Yeah, that is what they're looking for. I think last year we didn't have that go up to council, and it may just been a matter of timing. We did provide a letter of support last year. Like for previous, but now that Leslie is aware of this program, we may get a lot more requests, but
I think
it's good,
that,
they were successful last.
I think that's the salient takeaway, that Leslie's plugged into the grant application process, and historically MGSB never availed of that opportunity, believe it or not. So the fact that they are is good news for all of us. Mayor, hearing that, I'd move that that the town, under your pen, provide a letter of support for the project to staff at the Joint Services Board to be included in their application for the provincial capital assistance program funding.
Is there a seconder for that motion?
Kelly will fix that.
Councillor Carver seconds the motion.
And then just a quick comment that I could have made before, but I can make it on the motion, I think it's related. Just last year, we also applied to PCAP. Last year, both MJSB and the town were successful. And we will discuss at our next meeting, sorry, they're always pretty last minute, but options for application to PCAP again. So I do think that it's harmless to go ahead and provide a letter of support, and both things will be considered on their own merits. But I did just want to note that I likely also will take a shot at it, as we do every year and have been successful a few times in the past.
Okay, ready for the question? All those in favor signify aye. Opposed, nay. The motion is carried. Thank you. 7.3 staff report.
So this one, just a quick recap, is an amendment to the public participation and planning policy. Had some consultation with our solicitor and development staff about the process and our use of public information meetings, which the town has attempted to make, more common than is required by legislation, to give residents more access to information about zoning and planning changes. So essentially, this proposed amendment makes a distinction between land use processes that are going to change the zoning of a property, or a development agreement approval process. So things that would reasonably want to catch the attention of the neighbors as soon as possible, and are often driven by a third party who would like to use the opportunity of the public information meeting to promote their proposal. In cases where neither of those apply, so it's a textual amendment, and as we have a new planning strategy and land use bylaw, there will be a number of small textual amendments likely in the years following, just to, you know, make improvements. That would not require a PIM, but it would still go to the planning advisory committee, and of course, it would still eventually go to a public hearing. So there would be quite a bit of opportunity for public comment in both cases. So there's just a couple of proposed amendments to the bylaw in that, or to the policy in that respect. And it was previously circulated. We're just looking for council to make that change, but I'm happy to address any questions.
Are there any questions for the CEO? No? Okay, would someone like to make the motion? Or are there two motions here that we have to do, or?
No, the motion was just the council adopt the amended public participation in planning policy as presented,
Okay,
and then the policies attached.
okay.
I'll make it.
Oh, Councillor Parkerman makes the motion. Is there a second?
I'll second that.
Councillor Kingsmill seconds it. Any further discussion? Being none, I will ask you to signify if you're in favor with yay. Nay.
Sorry, I was a yay.
You would, yeah, I saw
I missed
that.
I missed it.
That's okay. It's a morning meeting. Drink more coffee. Good, the motion is carried, thank you. Moving on to okay, this is 7.4, not 7.3, 7.4. Sustainability Communities Challenge Plan.
Yeah, happy to speak to this one just briefly. I think we have been, you know, really, we talked about looking at PCAP. We have been really looking at all the different funding opportunities that might line up with things that we see on the horizon. And I guess this is really probably one of the strongest examples of that, is having a number of different contributing factors that are, I think, going to draw the town's interest to the upper portions of Orange Brook and the area known as the Wenzel Woods, due to the increasing issue of the Hemlock Lily indulgence spread, due to the increasing flooding downstream on the Ernst Brook. It seems like it's worth taking a bigger picture approach and defining solutions that could address a number of issues. That is a costly process, obviously something that we need financial support for, and perhaps a good fit for the Sustainable Communities Challenge Fund. We're also exploring the Provincial Flood Risk Infrastructure Improvement Program as a possible complement. They have different ability to fund different things. So for example, the FRIP program may fund land acquisition, which for conservation purposes obviously can be a significant factor. So we've put together, I guess, the current state of thinking, because the Sustainable Communities Challenge Fund application deadline is approaching. But we're still working with our supporting Clean Foundation folks and the District of Lunenburg to try to best define where to target the application. That being said, on that basis, we do recommend that council direct staff to apply for both of these funding programs in this respect. And hopefully the final definition of that over the next 2 weeks can be left to staff to just navigate, but happy to answer any questions.
Councillor Carter.
I'd be happy to make the motion, but I'd also like clarification around, will the application be submitted in conjunction with the district or solely by Mahone Day?
I think probably with the District of Lunenburg just writing a letter of support as opposed to as a partner is most likely. But definitely the District of Lunenburg has been very supportive, understanding that the upper portions of Ernst Brook are located in the District of Lunenburg.
So I'll make that motion.
Okay, is there a seconder?
Well, sorry, no,
Deputy.
I had a question,
Mayor?
sorry.
Oh,
Let's wait
Oh.
for a second.
I'll wait for a seconder.
okay, Councillor Fee will second
I'll second it.
the question.
So, if you apply now, no money gets spent though before the budget process, right? Is that how I read this?
Won't hear for a while.
Yeah, we would
So
be
it's
done our
all-
budget before we actually hear about this, but in terms of the interaction of this with the budget, I think that is worth mentioning.
Yeah,
So the Climate and Environment Committee has, I think, had a number of extensive discussions over the last few weeks
mhm,
about what our responsibilities would be to match the various funding that we've either successfully obtained or are attempting to obtain for climate environment initiatives. They're mostly initiatives having to do with stormwater and flooding. Some having to do with tree planting and canopy restoration and a few other environmental initiatives. So the draft budget we've prepared at this point contains the matching funds necessary to support those applications.
okay,
And would for this as well, but there's also a recommendation from the Climate Environment Committee about the necessity of including enough funds to leverage all of that external money in the coming year, if we do get it, which obviously in some cases like this, we haven't even applied yet.
Mhm.
So nothing we spend if we don't get it.
okay,
Councillor King?
So Mayor, this is, just another example of the benefit of having Lauren Clark on staff and all of the hard work and the vision really she brings to the table. So, I can't imagine we would even having this conversation around a solution like this in her absence. Just kind of reiterates the fact that, that was a terrific addition to our staff contingent 2 years ago. I am really curious about the opportunity for funding for land acquisition that would allow that support. I think that'd be another conversation that we probably need to have in camera about that opportunity, but it strikes me that would be an interesting and opportune topic to pick up at maybe at our next council meeting.
Mhm. Any other points? Oh, Councillor Hopper.
Yes, the area that this is planned for, is that fixed and firm, or can it be adjusted to another application?
I guess it's an interesting question. I think the areas that could benefit from intervention on the Ernst Brook watershed are both above and below Kinburn Street / the former railway crosscut. But those two portions have very different characteristics. So the interventions that you'd look at above that area, I guess above Kinburn more appropriately, would be things like leaky dams that are essentially designed to take advantage of the existing capacity of the land to hold water. So if the water drained less quickly, there's a lot of swamp in there. There's some like very deep ravine areas and things. So below Kinburn Street, there is also a great opportunity for some land acquisition. And more likely there would be like a more engineered intervention, like actually creating a retaining pond or structure there, which doesn't necessarily work as well with a conservation zone. So the concept of the Wenzel Woods is like, maybe it would be complementary to have interventions that support the naturalized character of the area. And so I think the Sustainable Community Challenge Fund application that we're envisioning would probably have a lot of both characteristics in it. I know the District of Lunenburg is applying for one on hemlock woolly adelgid treatment specifically, and for this to the same program. And we've been looking at the possibility of overlapping that a little bit, like, so we're complementing each other's applications as far as that goes. So all that is to say, I'm not sure the Sustainable Community Challenge Fund application that's been envisioned here could be directed to the area below, but the land acquisition monies with the FRIP application, that would be much easier to look at anywhere along the Ernst Brook as in play. And there are other funds already applied to, or that we're looking at for the engineered intervention below Kinburn Street or on the tributaries. I know that's complicated, but I hope that helps.
Well, it helps, but I must say I prefer to have solutions that deal with the overall issue, at least the map there, as to how it's all going to be dealt with, as opposed to piecemeal approaches to fixing this bit and that bit and another bit. But that does lead into in-camera discussion. So I would personally prefer to hold off until we have that discussion, which is.
Is there a deadline for this application?
Well, the FRIP deadline is actually 28th of April, which means it's after next meeting council. The Sustainable Community Challenge Fund deadline is the 22nd, which means it's before the next council meeting. So the motion says for both, but you could just do the Sustainable Community Challenge Fund in the motion. And we can revisit it for next time. We also have a closed session at this meeting, so we could have a little more discussion, closed session in this meeting.
Mhm.
I also have a question.
Counselor Winston?
Given that there are two counselors with property on both sides of Ernst Brook, do we need to abstain
No.
from?
You're not making money off it, are you?
No,
Okay, you're
I
fine.
just wanted to
Yeah.
double check.
Yeah, I mean, certainly if the discussion of land acquisition speaks to property you own. At a point when
I don't think
that
so.
you would want to declare.
Okay.
Yeah,
Great.
that's definitely the kind of thing you would want to declare. conflict.
Okay, just
Yeah.
wanted to be sure.
Yeah. It's always better to be sure.
Yes. Yeah.
So,
Yeah, I mean, I'm more than happy to have this motion deferred to after closed session if that would help people have the discussion. Just a suggestion.
yes, I propose
Okay.
that alternative.
Why don't we just do,
Defer to after closed session today.
Yeah, I mean, we could defer it again if necessary, but that would just give us
I
the
see,
opportunity
okay.
to touch on the property issue.
Okay.
okay, all right, so,
And then we would be adding an item to closed session. Then. Is that right?
yes.
Well, it's business arising from closed session.
Well, no, but Penny's just thinking when we go in, we should
Oh,
take contract
yeah, yeah.
negotiations and land and property, but you're right.
Fair enough.
Property
Okay.
acquisition.
Hmm.
Great.
Okay.
So we
All
need a
right.
motion to move that point to closed.
I think just the mover and seconder.
I'll make that motion.
Okay, move,
We don't have to have a motion.
No,
I just meant the mover and seconder of the original motion, could just, but it's
resend.
however Kelly wants to record it.
I mean, you can defer it or you can withdraw it, and the motion was made
Withdraw.
and there's discussion, so there should be.
I think it should be deferred until after the closed session.
Yeah.
So a motion to defer technically is a motion on the motion, so if you wanna say Colin made and Rebecca
If
seconded.
both are okay,
Yeah.
then.
Okay.
Okay. All right.
It's like a way that you would do it if it was hostile, which obviously it wasn't, but that's.
unintentional.
Yeah.
Right. So we have a mover and a seconder for the motion. Any further discussion
This is the motion to defer.
to defer
Are we-
to closed session?
I had just, instead of
Well-
said motion carried, said motion defers.
It's
It's
fine.
Okay.
Do we need a motion to?
We
defer
need to
the
vote.
closed
We
session?
haven't voted yet.
No.
We're doing that, so just vote on
Okay.
it.
Okay, Mayor, let's just. You
There
have
was,
my,
there was a motion by the deputy mayor and second by Councillor Twano
okay,
to defer to the
No.
closed session.
Counselor Carver.
sorry.
And then.
They may be.
They made-
Okay.
They were they were to,
Okay.
That is correct. but-
they withdrew their
Okay.
their motion. And then we had a new motion
Okay.
by the deputy mayor.
Did we withdraw the motion?
This is in our policy, we never do it, it's a motion on the motion, so
Okay.
there are very few procedural motions you can make on a motion when it's already been put on the floor. But one of them is a motion to defer, so on the original motion by Councillor Carver and Councillor Feeney, we have Deputy Mayor Kingsmill and Councillor Twano making a motion to defer till after closed session, and that's what we're in discussion of right now.
Okay,
And if that passes, then we'll just resume the original discussion. after
And
closed session.
then the original motion made by me and seconded by the deputy mayor will be addressed after the open meeting.
Yes,
The closed meeting.
Yeah.
yes, okay.
So all in favor of deferring.
I'm a yay on that one, Mayor.
Okay, all in favor, opposed? The motion is carried. An education
Sorry.
lesson here, Nick, for you.
Yeah, parliamentary procedure, a lot of
Yeah.
councils do a lot more of it.
And it's different, it's a different procedure than some others, so.
And every council does it.
Anyway, we are now moving on to, I'm just going through the stuff, but symbols of, 7.5, symbols of recognition.
Thank you. So this was a fairly complex sort of subject to cover in a report. So we're trying to cover the concerns that have been raised with respect to crosswalks, but also the way that any request for recognition or representation to the town could be handled going forward. The town has handled these in an ad hoc manner in the past, which has led to the installation of a number of crosswalks of recognition, I guess you could say, decorative crosswalks. So staff have considered a number of different alternatives, but ultimately the recommendation here, because it has just been switched off in the first meeting shortly, is to refer this report to the Lunenburg County Anti-Racism and Anti-Discrimination Advisory Committee for the recommendation back to council. Happy to take any questions in that regard.
Councillor Kingsmore.
Questions and I guess maybe sort of observations. So I think what we're talking about is the intersection of recognition and safety and accessibility, right? With what we're talking about. And I think we need to decouple those two things. So in my opinion, instead of moving this over to Jem and her team and that work, I really think that we should decouple recognition and safety and accessibility and look at the recognition aspect, right? Which is what is the sensitive topic, but look at it with a roundtable of people that should be part of the conversation. So I'm thinking the Chamber of Commerce, I'm thinking Lunenburg Pride, I'm thinking Communities in Bloom, really any other kind of community enhancement stakeholder, right?
The churches that we.
Be the Peace, I think, and the Church's Foundation. So I think, and thank you for the work, but I do think that instead of giving it over to the anti-racism, anti-discrimination team, we need to have a different tact. Because I think recognition sits with a larger body of people that want to stakehold and contribute. And you know, if you look across Canada, this subject matter is divisive and has caused all sorts of conversations and division and challenges. So that's my comment or observation on the report. I think we could look at a second alternative and more of a roundtable collaborative conversation as opposed to, here, Jim, what do you say?
Councillor Kaufman had a.
Can I just add, just to the characterization of it as being Jem, the recommendation is to refer to the new committee, which is composed of community representation from around the county. I'm not.
The committee, the anti-racism.
Yeah, I just wanna
Yeah.
clarify,
Oh,
it's
sure,
not a
sorry.
staff function, yeah.
Right, yeah.
Okay.
The new committee, okay.
Councillor Kaufman and then Carver, you
I
want
was
to, okay.
essentially gonna say
Yeah.
what the CAO just said, that it's
Oh.
not Jem,
Right.
it's a committee
Yeah.
representing many different facets of the community.
Okay,
Right.
Councillor Kaufman.
Well, my initial objective, of course, was to get common treatment for the crosswalks, which I think we've achieved. As to the symbols of recognition, it seems to me that this is a relatively simple matter made complicated. We had the representatives of Lunenburg Pride in, they understood the reason for this was pedestrian public safety. They accepted that, they wanted an alternate means of displaying their cause. So it's not an anti-racism issue, it's simply a matter of switching from one form of recognition to another form of recognition. And a relatively simple way of dealing with it is to grandfather the two that were approved previously by council. That would be the Pride and the Indigenous one, although the churches, or the church, I think it was, not churches, have property of their own they can use for that purpose if they so see fit. As to the notion of equity deserving groups, I would not like to be on any group that has to decide which is deserving and which isn't. It's a very complex issue. So I would, if it's my preference would be to solve this current issue that we have quickly. And if we want to move on to broader discussion, so be it. But we have a small in-town issue, which has been accepted by the affected group. I don't know about groups because I've only heard one input from the church, I think it is, who were offended, I heard. But I don't think they're aware of the reasons for this. If they are, I would hope that they would recognize that this is a matter of pedestrian safety, public safety, not a matter of being anti recognition. So that would be the positions I would take.
Thank you. Councillor Feeney?
So council has made a decision. there was a vote. The vote was 4-3, and although I wasn't thrilled with the way the vote turned out, you know, being on council means that I will certainly support the will of council. And I do think that the vote, although it was a contentious topic, was coming from a place of well-meaning and a desire for you know, consistent and public safety thinking. So I'd prefer not to relitigate the council's decision around the sidewalks. The decision was made. I wasn't happy about it, but what are you gonna do? Sometimes you lose votes. At this point, as far as trying to create a path forward where everybody can continue to view our town as a safe place and meeting the values that I know everyone around that table shares. The question is, how can that best be achieved? And I think some blend of the deputy mayor's view, which I respect, coupled with, you know, leveraging the staff and the infrastructure that we put in place with the other municipalities in Lunenburg County is the right answer. So I think from staff's perspective, the report was well crafted. I really thank Eric for his work. And that committee, which I believe is just getting started, may be part of the solution. To the deputy mayor's point, I think that's a big part of the solution as well. So, you know, I'd suggest that we at least take the matter to the new committee to see what their perspective on the topic is, and try to achieve some kind of Lunenburg County-wide consensus about this topic, because I think it will come up in all of the towns for all of the obvious reasons. So I think, you know, instead of going one way or the other, like, let's do both. Like, why wouldn't we do both? Why wouldn't we refer this report to the committee? And as well, tangentially, why wouldn't we work with the other stakeholder groups, to the deputy mayor's point, and try to, you know, basically, calm the waters? And I think we can do both things. I think both things are the right thing to do. So I do think the motion's appropriate, that we should refer the matter. And I do think a second motion to the deputy mayor's point would be well worthwhile. I certainly support both of those motions. What do you all think?
Councillor Twyman? Councillor Carver?
Still thinking.
Okay.
Still thinking. I'm a little bit reluctant to get involved with a large community conversation. With all the groups that the deputy mayor mentioned. I can see the rationale for that, but I could also see that it becomes very complicated and unwieldy, and I'm not sure getting the right input or the most useful input. That being said, I could argue both sides of that. But my instinct is to continue to think about the options that we're prepared to think about as a municipality, like flags or some painting sidewalks on the town property here when it's all reconfigured. But I mean, to continue thinking about those options, but and also having input from the anti-racism and anti-discrimination.
May I ask Councillor Pumpelman, did you say something about grandfathering in the current ones?
Yes, I did.
Okay.
Simply to deal with this issue and move forward. Take what is perceived by some as being anti-racism out of it, because if that's not what this is about.
I think that.
Sorry.
So Mayor, I mean, that's an interesting idea in the rearview mirror, but council's already weighed in on this. And although I didn't support the motion that inevitably passed, council did pass a motion to eliminate all recognition sidewalks in this community. So the question here is, I'm not sure even procedurally if we're going to be able to revisit that topic. So as far as grandfathering the sidewalks, I mean, that would have been a terrific conversation to have a month ago, but council's already weighed in on
No,
this.
no, so, beg your pardon.
Councillor Palfrey?
I'm not talking, you said sidewalks.
Crosswalks.
That's not what we're talking about at all. This is an alternate form of recognition, which is not crosswalks. That's what the issue is.
I thought we were talking about grandfathering crosswalks.
No, grandfathering the two causes by recognizing them in a different way.
Oh, well, okay.
Oh, okay, okay,
That's it.
okay,
Absolutely, that's it, yes.
all right.
And as for painting sidewalks, it's the same issue as slippery crosswalks. Why on earth would you do it? So look, there were some, in the staff report, there were some alternate options for recognition. There were some benches you can get, which apparently are ready-made, so to speak. We have benches to put in on the Edgewater Street project. That's a possibility. Flower gardens, I guess, are a possibility. I don't think painting the side of buildings in the heritage town is particularly a good idea. But there are options to move forward with. So if we were to have a discussion with Lunenburg Pride about what do they think about putting a bench or two in the appropriate colours on the Edgewater Street project, our Pride and Joy, would that, Pride and Joy, wouldn't that be?
You said that online, okay?
Wouldn't that be acceptable to them as a solution, which takes the heat off and leaves the discussion available for a large conversation if you want, but where that leads to, I'm quite concerned about, because it's out of our, and I'm concerned about
Okay,
to Councillor Carlos.
okay. Deputy Kingsmill, you had your hand
No,
up?
I-
You
Mayor,
withdrawn? Okay,
just-
Councillor
Mayor,
Keating.
just in the interest of time, I'd recommend we do two things. One, I'd be happy to make the motion and to refer the report to the new committee, regional wide committee. And the second thing, maybe it would be appropriate for the deputy mayor to provide a notice of motion. And then at the
Sure.
next meeting,
Sure.
we could have, I guess, a fulsome conversation on
The topic of belonging and recognition.
and working with the other community groups and
Right.
have it in kind of a structured way. I do think these are kind of two parallel tracks. And then
Sure.
so why don't we handle the business where I believe there is consensus? I think there is consensus to refer the report. So why don't I make that motion to refer the report to the Lunenburg County Anti-Racism and Anti-Discrimination Advisory Committee for their recommendations back to council. And hopefully there's support on the table to at least do that much today.
Are you making that motion?
Yes, he's making that motion. Is there a second?
I'll second it.
Second by Councillor Carver. More discussion,
If I
Councillor.
may.
Yes,
So the grandfathering, the two causes that Councillor Palfreman referred to, that's the Pride and the Indigenous. Grandfathering the causes, not necessarily grandfathering the current method of recognition.
Definitely not.
So that raises the question for me about policy. Grandfather, I see the CAO put up his hand the minute I said policy. Grandfather of what policy we would need to have in order to recognize that idea. Because what is another cause? What about if, because some communities recognize officially the Acadians, for example, or Black history. So though as causes or issues to address, so that's a third issue. We have the safety, we have the anti-discrimination, and we have recognizing causes, policy.
If I may, grandfathering implies that's the end of it.
Unless somebody comes along and
No,
says we want.
no, that's the end of it.
we
We're
recognize no other.
recognizing,
Yeah, good luck.
well, okay, but also good luck on how are you going to decide who and when and what to do about it?
Well,
Is it an endless list of recognition on?
I think
on town
council had
property?
done that in previous years with flag raising,
Yes,
and it was very unpopular. And so they've switched back to flag raising and recognition, not to say that it can't come up again. I'll get some information from the CAO and then we'll continue the discussion.
There was a section of the report, obviously speaking to policies, and this is exactly the point, is that one way or another, future requests would need to be handled. They could be handled by saying, we have a policy that says we will not accept any future requests. That's a way they could be handled. We actually have all of these different methodologies in place for different things already. So, you know, our signage policy, for example, it takes the signs that were already installed by third parties like the chamber, and it limits the signs that can be installed by third parties on town property to those signs that pre-existed the policy. Amendment of the policy itself is required to permit another sign. So if a group came to council and said, we want you to put up a sign to promote this thing, council would actually have to amend the policy because it grandfathered in the signs that pre-existed the policy. So there's an example of a policy that doesn't, you know, provide for handling of requests in any manner other than actually amending the policy. We also have a flag policy that explicitly provides for handling of requests on an ongoing basis, even without those requests necessarily going in front of council, depending on whether they have previous and in accordance with the policy. So, you know, a lot of different options. I think it clearly speaks to the need to have a policy and therefore probably referring the policy item along with the rest of the report, because that's the recommendation, to the Anti-Discrimination and Racism Committee is a good place to start. It will eventually come back to council, who assuredly would refer any policy recommendation to our own policy and strategy committee for discussion. But I do think there's a larger question of how do you best approach handling requests from different groups? And just a clarification, because we're all trying to learn new language around the idea of equity deserving groups. We received a letter at our last, actually, it's in the strategic plan correspondence, so you'll probably all have read it, and it's on the agenda later today, pointing out that the term equity seeking groups puts the onus on groups that may perhaps not be achieving equity to be seeking it, whereas the term equity deserving groups, as used by Eric in the report, just means everyone deserves equity, and in some cases, intervention is required to achieve that. So just to the point about, you know, well, who decides who deserves equity? That's not what that terminology is intended to infer. So I just wanted to, because we very topically just had a letter about this on our strategic plan where we use the term in the draft equity seeking groups.
Right, saw that.
Councillor,
I get final, I promise, a final point. And then I kind of
Your final.
my final point, and then I kind of beg for them for the vote on this topic. One, you know, I think times change, cultures change, communities change, and community values change. And the idea that we'd have a policy that would restrict a future council from, you know, adopting the norms of the day, I think is really problematic. And I guess, you know, in the sweep of time, in the arc of time, in most of our lives, we've seen huge social change. I wouldn't want to suppose what the social norms of the day will be in 2050 or 2060. I definitely know having a town council policy that precludes recognition is problematic. Second thing is that in a more recent example, after the mass casualty event in Portage Peak, we had a sign come and be erected in front of the cemetery called Nova Scotia Proud, Nova Scotia Strong. Nova Scotia Strong was very benign, very supportive. People had Nova Scotia Strong symbols on their cars and on the back of their vehicles, and it was a, you know, point of pride, a point of you know, community support from one another. Well, within 2.5 years, that term and that symbol evolved into something much different, to a point where there was a very significant portion of the community that was offended by that term because it had been co-opted by organizations that not everybody agreed with. And so things do change, and symbols change, and the meanings behind symbols change. And so I just think it's very difficult for anybody in the, you know, in April of 2025 to presuppose what the world's going to look like 10 years, 15 years down the road. So just, you know, sometimes less is more. Sometimes you don't need to do anything. You can just kind of use the best judgment. And I have every confidence that whoever's sitting around the council table 10 years from now, they'll know what the right thing to do is. They're going to do what's in the community's interest. So I wouldn't want to tie anyone's hands on what flags we fly, what symbols we promote. We'll see how the world evolves. But I would call for the motion to be voted upon there, unless anyone else has other thoughts on the topic.
I think Councillor Carver had,
Right, so the motion that Councillor Feedy is referring to is the matter of referring the report to the Anti-Racism, Anti-Discrimination Committee.
correct.
And that's on the table. We're in
Yes.
discussion about that. I just want to throw one more thing in, which is that we currently do have a policy about declarations, and has been established some years ago that the town of Mahone Bay does not make declarations for any causes. And for me, that's been a very helpful policy, because it helps us avoid the complex conversations that would come up around every issue that is addressed, people want to have addressed. And I appreciate Joe's comments about being how social norms change. And every council and members around every council team are going to be different. And we can't legislate what's going to happen 10 years from now, but we can manage what happens now. So I tend to prefer the idea of limiting what causes or issues we formally address. And I kind of like the idea of grandfathering and what we're currently doing, but that's not motion. So I'm ready for the vote.
Okay, all those ready? Question? Okay, all those in favor signify with aye.
Aye.
Opposed? One,
Was that opposed to
No, Brian opposed.
okay.
that? I forgot to say one thing in my little thing.
Yes, Councillor Carver. Motion carried though. before-
Which was it in the letter that goes with the report? Perhaps that some of the context of this conversation be included in that letter, is that possible?
Well, this conversation is on YouTube, so it's extremely possible, in fact, whether you mean to or not, I'm sure it will be included.
Fair enough.
Who signs that letter? Do I sign it on behalf of council? Is that?
We're
or
just
is it
referring
just-
the report, so
Okay.
it'd just be an email.
Okay.
I mean, it'll go through Jem to the committee
Okay.
and Penny will also be there, so you could have a first-hand view of it, yeah.
Okay. All right. Moving on. Are we ready to move on?
Do I need to make the notice of motion here at this point
Yes.
about, I'm not sure what the motion will be, but notice of
Said
motion
concerning public input on the topic.
concerning public input on the concept of belonging and what that means to Mahone Bay.
Okay. Thank you for that. We don't need any seconder for that.
Great.
Let me get back to my agenda. And we
Which?
are moving on to council items under 8.1, Mayor Lonas Croft appointment of alternative to the Lunenburg County Anti-Racism. And I have no appointee for that. Is there someone who would like to? I didn't know I was to do this, so.
Oh, you're looking for an alternative.
An alternative
Alternate.
or when,
And-
when Councilor Carver is not available for a meeting. She doesn't miss many meetings, believe me.
We could refer it to the next meeting. If council wants to
Okay.
discuss it in alternate.
Okay,
I just want to say also that the alternate is free to attend any of the meetings,
Hmm,
and may speak at the meetings, but not vote.
Right.
In other words, you can't have two people voting from
mhm.
the same unit,
Right,
but it's worthwhile, I've always found, to attend the meetings.
Mhm.
Mayor, I'd move that we defer item 8.1 into the following council meeting.
Okay, great. All right, is there a seconder?
I'll second that.
Second by Deputy Mayor. Ready for the question? All those in favor signify aye. Opposed, nay. Our motion is carried. All right, 8.2, Councillor Paul Freeman, referral to policy and strategy committee.
Do I have to, the issue is a overall look at the matter of parking, public parking off street.
Oh, okay.
So that has already been mentioned as to what it is. Do I have to repeat it all again?
We just have to make a motion, so the
I'm
motion.
making the
at
motion,
Minimum
indeed,
is,
yes.
oh, you just don't wanna read out what's in the.
I can read it.
John, I
Yes,
can read
sure.
it.
Yes,
The council refer discussion on the development of a comprehensive long-term off-street public parking action plan to the policy and strategy committee.
Oh, okay,
Mhm.
okay, thank
I'll
you.
second that.
And second by Council Carver.
Can I just ask a
Yes, the AR.
Clarification question, so, I guess to Brian, why off-street only? Like, wouldn't we want it to coordinate all forms of public parking? Like, I know you're looking for more off-street parking, but wouldn't the plan be a,
I don't think it has to be totally exclusive of, but the focus is off-street.
I'm looking
parking.
for more off-street?
Yes, I mean, we have had votes recently on, for example, time parking on Main Street and issues like that. One thing may lead to the other, so that if there's adequate off-street parking, there may be less need for on-street parking, for example. So, but I guess the focus is getting cars off streets.
Mhm.
Well, I appreciate the clarification.
Okay. All right,
Sounds good.
any other questions? Ready for the vote? All those in favor signify aye. Opposed, nay. The motion is carried. Thank you for that, item to go to policy and strategy council. Compliment. 8.3 is the strat plan. And that came up as an agenda item today.
Yeah, so I'll just speak to, so we had called for public submissions
Yes.
of feedback with respect to the draft strategic plan. And the intention was for those to, the cutoff date was the 31st of March. And that was intended to mean that they could then be put onto the agenda for today's meeting to acknowledge them. At which point it was our expectation council would discuss how to move forward with the draft strategic plan. Not having added them to this agenda, which was just an oversight, I think this spot is for council to discuss how to take in that feedback and what further process you would like towards approval of the draft strategic plan.
Okay, those letters were all the letters. Plus I'm sure some of you have had little tidbits put in your ear informally, I guess. But there were, I think, four or five letters that came in. Four, okay. So you would have received those to go over. Councillor Carver.
Yes, we received 4 letters, including one from the Climate and Environment Committee, which had some fairly substantial suggestions, which I think we need to consider. And I'm just looking at the next date for the Policy and Strategy Committee on April 28th. And I can't remember what the agenda, what we have on our list, but would that work if we referred to the Policy and Strategy Committee for April 28th? And then refer back, make our recommendations back to
I
council?
think that's actually the most priority thing for discussion at
Yeah.
that meeting, so that we can have the strat plan adopted not later than the first regular council meeting in May,
Right.
which aligns with the budget timing and is what council has previously discussed. So I think, yeah, it would be a
Yeah.
priority item. I think if time permits, we could certainly also get into the parking in the same meeting. But we did have a couple of other policies that we highlighted at the last meeting. So I would just refer this and then we'll see how the committee agenda comes together. We'll talk to Suzanne.
Well,
about that.
and just because we discuss the topic, if we run out of time, we can put it on another policy and strategy committee meeting as well. But I think that is quite quite a list of recommendations from the Climate and Environment Committee. So that definitely would be a good place. And then if the parking doesn't get a wholesome discussion, it can also be deferred to just because it comes it can be deferred to another meeting too, so that we do have the full discussion. Yes, Councilor.
I'm just thinking of the parking issue because it came up today is sort of, it's not gonna bump other issues.
No,
that have been
no.
long-standing on our list.
No,
Gonna have to reprioritize our list. So I'd like to make that motion that we refer the consideration of the, public input to the strategic plan.
all of it,
All of the,
all the record, all the inputs?
Yeah.
Okay, not just the climate and
no,
environment, okay,
no, all the public input.
okay,
That's been received. To the Policy and Strategy Committee on April 28th.
okay. Is there a seconder for that motion?
Yeah,
Councilor
so-
Feeney, okay. Okay, ready for the question? All those in favor signify aye. Opposed, nay. The motion is carried. Thank you. So all those recommendations will come to policy and strategy. Okay,
They will be also added to the meeting package, just for anybody watching, if they want to see them after the end of this meeting.
Thank you.
Good.
sure.
They'll be added to the meeting package for the Policy and Strategy.
For today.
The minutes.
Oh, for today.
Yeah.
Okay.
So
Yeah,
if
'cause
you
the
want to
intention-
review them, they can go to
Yeah.
today's meeting package in a couple of hours.
Yeah.
We did want to have them be available to the
Yeah.
public. Yeah.
Perfect.
Okay, good. All right, thank you. Moving on to item 9, committee reports. The first one is MSJB, March 26th, and they go through. Hopefully you've read all the reports. There was Lunenburg County Senior Safety Program, Policy and Strategy Committee. Minutes, Climate Environment Committee minutes,
Mayor,
There's some recommendations.
sorry,
yes.
yeah, Mayor, I'd move that we receive items 9.1, 9.2, and 9.3 for information purposes.
Okay,
I'll second that.
all right. All those in favor signify aye. Aye, opposed, nay. The motion is carried. So we will stop at 9.4, which is the Planning and Advisory Committee, which I think has 2.
Mayor, on 9.4, I'd move that council council give or provide first reading to the land use bylaw with amendments to section 6.4.1 and 6.2.1. Aye.
Okay, is there a second for that motion?
Yep, second.
The second by the deputy mayor, thank you. Any discussion? We talked about this earlier in the meeting, so, okay, all right. All those in favor signify with aye. Opposed, nay. The
Mayor,
motion,
while I have it open, I'd move that council also provide first reading to the land use bylaw with an amendment to the current zoning map to include the area of Hawthorne Road in the residential unserviced RU zone.
I'll second.
okay, second by the deputy mayor, we discussed, well, we heard a presentation this morning. All those in favor signify with aye. Opposed, nay. The motion,
No, I'm not.
Oh, the motion is carried. Okay,
Before you move on.
No, we're all losing it.
Anyway,
Sorry.
All right.
Very quickly.
all right.
Start throwing things.
So now that that's passed, I wanted to speak to the scheduling of the hearings. So we gave first reading, which means that we're now able to move on to hearings on these items. We do have, I guess, the opportunity to schedule hearings in other venues if needed, so it's just something to consider. We've often held our public hearings in a different venue if we expected a large attendance.
Mhm.
I would strongly suggest that we take the opportunity to have the first reading on, or the hearing, I'm sorry, on the amendment to section 6.41 and 16.21 at the beginning of the next regular meeting of council. We've now timed things such that if Kelly puts it out on the website tomorrow, we meet the notice requirements for our next meeting of council. So we no longer have to do newspaper advertisements for these. So I would strongly suggest that we just go ahead and schedule that meeting here. to take place immediately prior to the council meeting. Whether we're now in the habit of doing that at 7 or at 6:30, I actually don't recall. Maybe this council hasn't chosen yet what your preference is.
We historically have done it earlier, I think, to try to start the regular meeting at 7,
So
so.
I mean, it's 6:30 for the hearing,
6:30.
Yeah.
even if we probably need very little of that time.
Mhm.
If we do it at 7, the good thing is if we're through it in 5 minutes, we're, I guess 15
Well, that's
is
true.
the minimum, but,
6:30 is
It's
fine.
6:30 is okay.
Yeah.
Gives us a little bit of
Well,
time.
here early anyway.
Yeah.
Okay, so 6:30 on the, regular council meeting night,
Yes,
which
is
is
that
the
video-
24th.
Is that live streamed as well?
And then, yeah, I think we have done, we can do, live, if it's here, we can't promise to it no matter where we are, but
And that
Yeah.
date is April
24th.
24th?
At 6:30. And I guess the question with the other one, like, it is obviously concerns a larger area to rezoning, it's specific, there's people who are interested, typically we've had a lot of people in attendance when we've talked about it. So council may want to consider not just adding it to that same hearing, but perhaps scheduling one like in the following week up to the community center or whatever your preference is. I don't know what the.
With the community hall, like,
Community room. in the
That's-
bar.
Yeah, the
that should
community
be-
room at the fire hall is
Yeah.
probably plenty large.
okay,
Mhm. Yeah, I'd expect that to be
So it's
fairly well
taking
attended.
up another evening. But I think if it's before the regular May council meeting date, which is the 13th, then, you'd be able to action it on the 13th.
okay.
Great.
If that seems reasonable.
Yeah.
So maybe Kelly will just look at options for dates the week of May 5th to 9th.
Mhm.
You know?
I mean, if we can do it that week, I think that would probably be good.
Okay.
Can't be the 8th.
So we'll advertise that one when we know about it, but I really wanted to make sure the other one was set, because we gotta advertise it immediately in order to meet the.
So I'll just send a email to everybody, a doodle poll, I think probably just the easiest way to do it for a meeting.
Yeah, just, there may not be that many options when we really look at it, so.
Right, okay,
Look around.
Yeah.
all right. Yes, Counselor.
Mayor, now that Nick and Emily have done the heavy lifting around the edits to the land use bylaw, I do think there's an outstanding piece of work for council to weigh in on. And as an outcome from our, commitments to the Hawthorne Hill community in the fall, and that's really around fire suppression, the lack of hydrants and the secondary egress from the community. So I do think there's a consensus around the table to try to figure out what we're going to do to address those the neighborhood concerns.
Mhm.
So maybe I'll just provide a notice of motion and I'll leave it with you and the CAO to figure out what agenda can accommodate the conversation, but it would be worthwhile, I think, to get everybody's impressions on the different, suggestions that we've heard to get, and I know staff has certainly met numerous times with Nick and his neighbors on the topic, so I do think it'd be wise if we all had the same information and figured out to what degree we knew what the facts on the ground were. And as
Mhm.
well, I know that the fire department is, they're certainly engaged, and if there's any, further infrastructure that they need to facilitate, fire suppression safety up there, like, I think we're all ears and we'd love to hear about it. So I think the motion is just to request a motion to request that we do have a follow-up town council meeting on the topic at some future date when convenient.
Okay, is there a second to that?
I'm
motion?
just providing. a notice.
Oh, you're
I'm
not,
just providing a notice.
a notice,
And I'll
okay.
I'll bring the motion.
Okay, CAO.
And further to that, I'll probably talk to Joe before that anyway, but Joe, if you haven't had a chance, maybe you did. There is a report in the PAC meeting package from last week that kind of details what the potential or, in progress actions on those things are.
Mhm.
And the most immediate one is for this budget process, Jonathan has looked at the kind of two obvious scenarios for alternative exits. And there's a tremendous difference in the magnitude of work involved.
Yeah.
So I do think that like what staff are going to be recommending into the budget is the very minimal cost of making the connection to the cemetery usable as a vehicular access in the event of emergency, which is the short-term thing. And then developing an actual proper plan with respect to the idea of an access from the other end of Hawthorne to the trail. Because it's actually gonna require quite a bit of work, like as we.
Yeah, on the land owned by the town. Anyway, it's an interesting conversation. I think there's a number of tangential issues that come out of that. You know, and I think we all know the players involved there on some of those paths. So I think a sweeping declaration has a lot of unintended consequences that council should be fully aware of before we weigh in on staff's recommendation there. But anyway, I think it's a worthwhile conversation.
Okay, do noted. Thank you. So moving on to the Climate and Environment Committee final meeting minutes. I don't understand
I
that.
don't think there's anything coming from that, but there
Okay.
is from 9.6, the.
From 9.6,
Draft.
Climate and Environment Committee draft meeting minutes?
Yeah.
Yeah,
And can I say just between the two, there was actually another meeting of the Climate and Environment Committee. It's my mistake that the minutes of that meeting are not included in the package. There was a single recommendation, and I just wanted to bring it to people's attention. The recommendation was that in consideration of the strategic plan feedback that the committee would provide, the committee recommended the council would invite representatives of the committee to speak to that feedback at an upcoming venue of your choosing. In this case, possibly the policy and strategy meeting to which the strategic plan feedback has been referred, or something between now and then. So I don't know if council's willing to consider that on the fly, but ultimately it does relate to your having already decided to refer that to the policy and strategy meeting. And is essentially was an offer from the membership of the committee to be available to speak to their submission if that would be desirable by council. And I do apologize that I only just realized that those minutes, that recommendation did not make it into the package.
okay, did you still want to deal with that at this meeting?
Well, what I'm suggesting is that the recommendation was that council invite the Climate and Environment Committee
Okay.
representatives to present their
Okay,
strategic plan feedback. And so you,
Yeah.
whoever would make that motion, if you felt you would make it, would insert the to which meeting you felt it would be appropriate. I'm just pointing out that the Policy and Strategy Committee already has this on its agenda and might be the most appropriate venue if you don't want to have a separate discussion. You could do it on lunchtime sometime, or, you know.
okay,
So if somebody wants to make that motion, usually I guess the chair or someone who's at the meeting would make that motion.
Right, I'm having a little difficulty here thinking on the fly.
okay.
About how best to approach that, and,
Well, with the first one, do you want to explain what Embark is for the public? Because I don't know if
for
everyone,
the first motion, you mean?
yes,
Listed here. What will we do with the CAO's suggestion of the other items? Shall we just do this motion first?
do this motion first.
Yeah, okay. So at the last meeting, the committee did discuss the value of the activities that have been initiated by the Mahone Bay Adaptable Resilient Community, Embark.
Okay,
or
Embark.
Whichever way you want to pronounce it,
Okay.
but it's Mahone Bay Adaptable Resilient Community. And it is a subgroup of the Climate and Environment Advisory Committee, which is intended to engage the community in activities and awareness events that will help strengthen our community and in the ways that we can adapt to climate change.
Okay,
So the request is that that council allocate $3,000 for the 2025-26 fiscal year to provide the committee with capacity to lever Embark initiatives in the community. So that's my
Okay.
motion.
so that's not to go to the budget process?
Yes. it
Oh,
is.
to go to the budget process, or, Are we agreeing for this amount of money today?
Oh, that's a good
I think
question.
we have to refer to the budget.
Yes, that's a good
Yes.
question. Thank you for that. So I'll change the motion to be that council refer the committee's recommendation to allocate $3,000
Right.
for the 2025-26 fiscal year to budget discussion.
Thank you
Thank
for
you for
that.
that.
Okay, that clarification. All right, is there a seconder for the motion? Council Coleman. Okay, any discussion? Questions? Okay, all those in favor signify aye. Opposed, nay. The motion is carried. Okay, your second one.
The second motion is about more about the budget, and the committee had reviewed and discussed material that the manager had provided, manager and CAO had provided. And in the climate related activities recommended from the staff, the amount of $88,420 was the amount that the town would be putting into climate related activities, and a lot of that is the co-funding.
Okay,
So that would complement the external fundings. And including $20,000, which represents in-kind services from staff. So the other items are listed in the attachment. And the committee,
so this is for the budget process as well. To take this to the budget as well.
yes, I believe so. So the committee is recommending that council refer the discussion of allocation of $88,420 in respect of the various external funding commitments outlined in the 2025-2026 work plan and budget document.
Did you get that, clerk?
Yeah.
Okay,
I will.
all right, thank you. Is there a seconder for that motion? Did you want to do that one?
I'll second that.
Okay, second by Councilor Toronto, who's
I just wanted to point out, this is what I had referred to earlier, but I think everybody's probably clear on that, but just in case anyone's looking for the connections to matching funding to leverage external fundings, which have either been approved or we are seeking, which would not then be actually expended unless the matching
Right.
funding were obtained.
okay.
So we would be planning to put that in the draft budget, but I think it's important to acknowledge that there's a whole team of community representation that also feels that that should be included in the budget.
Sure. Sure, okay, thank you, Council Carver. Are we ready for the vote? All those in favor signify aye. Opposed, nay. The motion is carried. Thank you. Thanks to members of the Climate and Environment Committee for their wholesome report and recommendations. A lot of work has gone into that. You should be on that committee, Nick.
Next time.
So
Yes, Councilor Carver.
back to the CAO's issue
Yes.
about inviting or including the members of the committee to speak to their recommendation about the strategic plan,
Right,
which was very fulsome. Quite frankly, it had escaped my memory that issue had been picked up. So the CAO has a much better memory than mine. So there was, between the two meetings that have reports tonight, there was an interim meeting because the committee felt so strongly about developing a coherent recommendation to council about the strategic plan. And we today have referred consideration of their input that was developed at that meeting to our policy and strategy committee. So, I just want to check with council. Do we want to ask, members of the Climate and Environment Committee to address the Policy and Strategy Committee that night? Is it enough to have received their report? What would,
Councillor Copeland?
I think the report is pretty fulsome and clear. I don't think feel particular need for them to be present.
Anyone else thoughts?
I mean, I would agree. I think this is a great report. It's, they could come and repeat it or answer questions maybe, but it's very thorough.
Yeah, I think, you know, going through the budget deliberation process, my sense of things is not 100% of all requests are going to be able to be afforded and funded. So, I mean, I think there's a certain virtue in understanding that of the hundreds of thousands of dollars of requests of taxpayer funds, like what are the, like, are they do we understand their recommendations based on the number one, number two, number three priorities? I think that would be worthy of, you know, having some further conversation, but you know, everyone's time is valuable. So whether that can be accommodated through a subsequent email or a follow-up document, or whether we'd rather hear from the horse's mouth what the views are. I think what's pretty impressive about that committee is that how, you know, they're very engaged. And so I think when you have that level of engagement from the committee, I think it's probably worth their while to at least provide an opportunity to hear what their thoughts are. I know, I've never been to that committee, but I know most of the people on the committee well, and suggest that if they're open to have a conversation with council, I'm certainly absolutely willing to make the time to hear it. I just don't know if that policy and strategy meeting is too late in the month, given our decisions to defer some of the budget discussions until May, which I think is a wise decision. Then, you know, we can certainly prepare. When is that committee meeting, Penny?
it's next meeting?
Yeah.
It will be the first Wednesday of May.
First Wednesday.
I have a suggestion, which is that the April 24th council meeting, we could invite them to come and speak for 10 minutes.
As a
As a
presentation.
presentation.
Oh,
on the 24th.
Sure, that's the week before. And
Yeah,
then
and then that would feed into
Let's do
our
that.
conversation.
Yeah,
So-
that works.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Sure.
okay.
Good idea.
So in terms of protocol and procedure, should an invitation come from the mayor? Or should I as chair or Lauren as staff communicate this to members of the committee?
Well, I think since it came as a recommendation of the committee to do a motion that says that council invite representatives of the committee to present to the regular council meeting on the 24th of April would be the right way to do it. And then as a motion, staff would generally be the ones to follow it up. Yeah, I think that'd be appropriate.
I'll make that motion then, that members of the Climate and Environment Advisory Committee be invited to give a brief presentation or Q&A at the April 24th council meeting.
Okay,
Sure.
second by Councillor Hoffman. Okay,
And this is about their recommendations for
Yeah.
the strategic plan.
Yes.
yeah,
Yeah.
And before we leave that topic, I just want to tell you.
can we
that-
vote?
Oh, yes.
Okay, okay, all those in favor signify with aye. Opposed, nay?
Thank you for that, everybody. Keep in mind or be aware that the District of Lunenburg have developed their strategic plan with 4 pillars. And all the environmental issues were embedded throughout those 4 pillars. And I just happened to watch a meeting at which their council discussed that issue, because there were some on council who felt very strongly that the environment issue should be a separate pillar, a 5th pillar. And in that meeting, the mayor actually left her seat in order to speak up to the issue. The decision in the end was to institute a 5th pillar for environment. Was just be aware that was a very interesting council discussion
Well, it was a priority in their last council.
Correct.
And then the next strategic plan, it was embedded, like it wasn't a visible part of the strategic plan. It was there, but not as
Yeah.
easy to find.
So they extracted all the pieces that are distributed and brought them all into one heading.
More or less, yeah, more or less, yeah. Thank you.
Okay, thank you for that information as well. All right, we are moving, work plan and budget document to, is that still part of climate and?
Yes, that was the budget.
Yeah,
that was-
Okay, okay.
We're done.
All right,
We're done.
that's the attachment, okay. 9.7 is the audit and finance, Counselor Feeney.
Mayor, as you know, last evening, the Audit and Finance Committee met. It had a full contingent and the entire committee was present for the discussion, including our CAO, our finance manager, and as well our support staff from BDO. We reviewed the financial statements, the final financial statements for March 31st, 2022, 2023, which have been completed to our the committee's satisfaction. The committee recommended to council to accept the financial statements, which would allow the FIR to get submitted. And then we understand that that work is happening, and I believe the commitment has been made to the province to have the FIR done in the next 2 weeks. CAO, I think that's the cadence. So with that background, I would move that council accept the final version with the edited notes of the 2022-2023 financial statements, and as they've been amended. And then I'd had one final point to make after someone seconds that motion, please.
And second by the deputy mayor.
The final point is that these minutes have been in the public domain and they've been in the community's hands, widely distributed as of last August. The edits that were reviewed last evening were really around a number of edits to the notes. The actual financial statements that were reviewed last evening are immaterially changed from the numbers that were widely distributed in August. So I think that's important context. There are requests for changes based on the province's direction in collaboration with BDO and town staff. So really what the changes that have occurred since August of 2024 and today are really in consultation with the province around how they want the information to be provided and some of the presentation formatting. So I think there was a wide consensus that the improvements were made, and I think we're in a better place today, and this should move the matter along.
Thank you for that.
Yes.
Any other discussion? We had lots last night, so and all of us were there. So anyway, okay, I'm going to call for the question. All those in favor signify aye.
Yes.
Opposed, nay. The motion is carried. Thank you all.
One down.
Under new business,
One down.
there was no new business that was added to. Are there any questions from the public? No. From the clerk and clerk reports or questions or comments? The two people watching? Oh, I think we have nighthawks that like come to.
I'll just be
Yeah.
watching the
CBC.
meeting afterwards.
Yeah.
Yeah, today's was for sure.
It's not watching.
Yeah, that's fine. Okay, well, being so, we will.
From the person in the gallery?
Yeah, that was, sorry.
No, you're satisfied, thank you, and thank you for joining us. We will move, I will accept a motion to go into closed session. And we will take a small break after that motion. Okay.
Did you specify the topics, please?
Can you read the topics? 12.1 MGA 222E contract negotiations, and then I don't know the number of the land and property.
It's A.
It's A.
Sale, lease and acquisition agreements.
Two, two,
I
Two,
gotta-
two,
I gotta
two,
find
two,
that.
A.
A, okay. Land and property acquisition.
I will second the motion.
And Councillor Carver, all those in favor?
Yeah.
Aye, opposed, nay. We will take a recess and we will continue in closed session. Thank you all.